Okay.
All right. You all set, Cheryl?
Pam, go ahead.
Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Our August meetings, that can't be possible. Let's see, I need the agenda. There we go. All right, first is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a second? I didn't hear that if there was.
Second.
Okay. Any comments? I'll just make two quick ones. One, I'd like to pull item number 8 off of the consent agenda. I think we need to talk about that, probably in executive session. Make sure we understand what each one of those is.
Okay.
And then item number 6, I just want to be clear, as soon as this person gets their feet on the ground, I really want to see them come to the board with a plan, and I don't mean come alone, but come prepared with a plan for identifying and resolving all the issues that we have in our sort of paper-based HR system. Because it's important that this not become just I don't know, like somebody that's there to just keep things business as usual. All right. Any other comments from the board?
Question on it.
Questions?
Salaries prorated?
Because they're starting in August, so it wouldn't be the full amount.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? All right, very good. All right, then we've got some presentations to take a look at. So I'll turn this, I don't know who's going to actually take us through the school counseling plan.
I think that was just reviewed by the board, not a presentation. It's just to say, to get it approved by the board. It talks about counselors, their roles and responsibilities, their delivery and accountability of the services that they provide, and goals set. So it was really for the board to review.
Okay. All right, do we have a sorry. I don't see, it says it needs to be approved by the board, but I don't see a motion.
It's just a presentation for them to look at it.
So we bring it to the next board meeting for approval. Okay.
I mean, I think we could just do, if the board is comfortable, we could do, approve the updated school counseling plan presented on August 3rd, at the August 3rd regular board meeting, if the board feels comfortable doing that. Has everybody had a chance to go through it?
Yes, I was just wondering where so this is the updated, I just wasn't sure if this was new or this is
It has to be updated annually.
annual. Thank you.
Yeah, so there is an advisory council that has to meet minimum twice a year, and they just review. ASCA basically is the governing body for school counselors, so they have to review any of the updates from ASCA, and then they have to make changes in the plan. If you go down to like page 15, in the teens here, this is their planned activities throughout the school year. That's how they meet the standards for counseling. And then obviously they do any sort of responsive counseling that they need to based on student needs. But this is the overall plan and scope and sequence for the year.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll just put it out there. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I will. Dave will second it.
Okay. Yeah, my only comment, let's make sure we have them. If it says the board has to approve, let's make sure we have a motion in the future. Any other comments, questions from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right, let's see. We've got the next discussion is on educational equity, where we basically, that work is on hold, and where we're going next, if we're going next. And I don't know who's in the room. It's hard to see, but I really want to get from the administration, what do we intend to do moving forward? So I'll let you guys take us through that.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Good evening, community and colleagues. Thanks for being here this evening. So tonight we're going to talk about educational equity in Millbrook, and the equity project team is here. We have Deputy Superintendent Caroline Hernandez, Director of Technology Elliot Garcia, and we have Elms Principal Mike Sotero, and myself. We're all part of the equity project team. So Elliot's going to lead us off, and then he's going to pass the torch to Mike, and then Mike's going to pass the torch to me, and I'm going to pass the torch to Caroline. And questions along the way, if you'd like from the board, we're happy to respond.
Okay, so thanks, everybody. We're gonna start off real basic. What is equity? Before coming to Millbrook, I had the benefit of having pretty extensive training in this subject in a couple of different places in a lot of different ways, and I think it means something different to a lot of different people. One of the things that we did here is try to just get down to a very basic definition of what equity means in general, and we just look at equity as simply treating differences differently, understanding that not everybody comes from the same place equipped the same way, and recognizing that and treating our students accordingly. So we get into this conversation about equity versus equality. These are words that get confused, transposed around. I just wanted to take a minute and talk about the differences between equity and equality. So when we talk about equity and equality as a general subject, I think we all agree that we all want equality for all of our students. Equality meaning that every child has the same opportunity for instruction and positive life experiences as Millbrook students. We do understand that not all students walk in equally able and equipped, and we recognize that in order to achieve that equality, we have to be flexible in meeting our students where they are and adjust how we equip them for their time through their experiences here at Millbrook and then afterwards. Those adjustments themselves are how we apply equity to achieve that equality. So it's really not ever a matter of equity versus equality, but it's simply leveraging equitable inputs to make sure every student that we serve has the same opportunity to be successful.
When you hear this term thrown around a lot in our national conversation, as Elliot said, it has a lot of different meanings. And what we wanted to speak to is what does equity look like here at Millbrook? So on the surface here in our community, especially folks who only know a little bit about our community and on the close outside, they look at Millbrook and they see, for lack of a better way to explain it, like an Orbis calendar. You know, we're known for wine countries, for country club lifestyle, or even like the movie being filmed in town the rest of this week. Don't park near the diner, by the way, everybody can't park there. HBO's there. But in reality, our community underneath the surface level is made up of families from different ethnic backgrounds. We have students in all 4 buildings who speak multiple languages. We have students with academic needs that range from being accelerated multiple grades, all the way to having intense special education needs. And then finally, and probably the most prevalent in our community, for those of you who live here and spend time here, you know, our socioeconomic divide is huge. You know, we have folks on the billionaire spectrum who live here, and they're stakeholders in the community. Sometimes their children go here, as well as folks who get free and reduced lunch, and we have to offer any sort of assistance that we can to them. So our community is made up of students who come from multiple backgrounds. All these kids have different life experiences, and they need different sort of supports and instruction. So in this conversation about equity, if we only focused on one thing, like race, or we only focused on one language, or just two of the languages, you know, we won't really be doing our jobs. That's not what Millbrook is all about. So although you hear this term thrown around a lot in the national level and even on the state level, our equity work in Millbrook is going to look a lot different than what you're hearing at Gibson or at Newburgh, or for that matter, Rhinebeck or Dover or some of the other neighboring districts. Our equity work is really focused on our Millbrook families, our Millbrook students. It's our job to meet each student where they are. Elliot, would you mind just going back one slide? Our goal really is to provide the supports necessary for each individual student to reach their own potential. That's our goal when we talk about equity for kids, for students here. So to illustrate that point a little bit more, and actually we use this with kids when we talk about differentiation of instruction, we use it with staff when we talk about nice giant jersey over there. We use this with kids when we talk, when we use this with our staff, when we talk about equity. Just for those in the room and those online, just take a moment and look at that graphic, just for a moment and kind of see the difference there. Elliot, is there a way you can get that gray thing off there? Sorry about that.
It keeps popping up, but I'll try to get it.
Thank you, sir.
Could you explain that?
Equality, it is every student receiving the same exact instruction. So I have 23 kids in front of my class. And I'm going to stand up there, and I was a social studies teacher. So I'm going to tell you the story about Paul Revere. I'm going to say it the same way in all 5 sections of my class. I'm just going to tell you the same story. And then I'm going to give you the same test. Or I'm going to give you all the same exact project with the same exact requirements. And I'm going to expect you all to do your best potential. I don't care that you have dyslexia. I don't care that you are deaf. I don't care that you need glasses. I don't care that you have a tutor at home, and I don't care that you have a single mom at home and you can't even score points on the project because you're watching your baby sister, instead of doing your homework. That's what equality is. It's giving everybody the exact same level of instruction, and then saying, hey, all those kids, we're expecting the same sort of output. The second, underneath equity, it's giving every student not a guaranteed outcome. I'm not saying we're all going to make sure you get these. That's not what we're here for. But we're saying if you need something to be successful, we're going to make sure you get it. So examples of this, say you have 5 siblings in your family. Not all of you need glasses, but 3 of you do. And by getting those glasses, those 3 now have the same opportunity that those who didn't have glasses have in kindergarten and 1st grade to learn how to read. It's the same as students who have dyslexia do text through audiobooks. The same idea of that. Speaking to the different level of our students' academic abilities, we have kids in the high school who are taking AP classes at a very young age and getting college ready. And the right answer is not making them sit in the classroom and just do the regular work. It's finding ways to accelerate. That kid knows their stuff in 10th grade. So they better have programs that they can do that gets them prepared for college. But at the same token, in their same grade, maybe not their same class, are students who are still reading at 6th grade level. And we need to give them that support too. How do we modify that text? How do we give them reading support in one of their other periods so that they can get there? We have some students who need mental health support. And we have to supply it for them. That's going to look a little different than other kids who don't need mental health support. And then the most tangible and most recent is our experience in the pandemic. We had many families who didn't have internet access during this pandemic when we went remote. And it was our job to make sure that we could still make the instruction accessible. So we went out and we provided those families with internet access. We didn't give every single family in Millbrook internet access. They all didn't need it. But those 12 up on Platte Hill did, and we gave it to them. Not here, but I'm just saying, those people don't need it, they have it. But the same thing that we do with like free and it's giving each student what they need. Again, not guaranteeing outcome. We're not saying you're all getting B's. We're not giving participation trophies. But it's saying, do you have reasonable support to reach your potential? But if you need glasses, we're making sure you get glasses. You know, if you need this sort of reading support, we're making sure you get it. And if you know what you're doing and you're very successful and you're at the top, it's also on us to make sure that you're enriched or accelerated or given the challenge that you have. That's really our definition of equity.
Can I ask a question?
Not at this time. You really have to wait for the public. Please jot it down.
Don't.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. That's fine.
Totally fine. That's, I was gonna do that anyway, no worries.
There will
Don't
be
lose
a
your
question
though.
period.
Please write it down.
Right now, when Billy means questions, I mean, we reach the part where questions from the public. Thank you.
So why engage in this type of work? So honestly, historically, we've been doing a lot of this for a long time. Millbrook's been known for, the education term is differentiation. So it's, you know, with the kids in front of you, you're giving different groups of kids in front of you different what they need. You know, we're meeting the students who are advanced with advanced curriculum, and then we're giving students who need extra supports the supports they need. So with each graduating class, we're dedicating more time and energy towards that simple layman's phrase, you know, meeting students where they're at. Whether you're looking at adding additional support and enrichment programs for our students, which we're constantly doing, or we're creating social emotional learning, which is huge. The impact of the pandemic on all of our students has been extremely significant in their development. Or we're talking about ways that we can develop our current staff and their talents to meet the changing needs of our student body. You know, our main goal is that last there in bold text. You know, it's our job as educators to ensure that we can provide equitable supports necessary so that each individual student can reach their potential.
So let me just throw this out there because I'm sure it's on people's minds. Our work on equity is to make sure, you know, if we have students that are Spanish speaking or their parents are only Spanish speaking, that we find ways in which to, you know, to get them up to speed, to help them get on board. This is not changing our curriculum, integrating critical race theory into our curriculum, going back and modifying our subject matter to focus on, you know, all cops are bad and all. I mean, these are the types of comments that are coming out of other districts. And when I look at it from Millbrook's standpoint, it's more about continuing what we've been doing to try to make sure every kid has the opportunity to succeed and not to, you know, modify our history classes or modify, you know, to go into add sections on you know, the oppression of the senior citizens. I mean, this is more about making sure that we have the tools so every individual has an opportunity. And critical race theory, all that stuff has we have no intention of putting that in Millbrook curriculum, and we have no intention of, you know, focusing or changing our curriculum. It's more about changing the way we teach. Is that pretty fair?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're talking about changing content. Thank you for expanding on that. It's about making sure that every kid has what they need to be able to understand that content, and then more importantly, base, present the skills that we're teaching in that fashion.
And I want to say one thing too. It's about accessing the curriculum. So one of the things that we've discussed over the past couple of years is in Millbrook, if you take an advanced placement class, you're required to take the advanced placement test at the end of the year, and there's a cost associated with that. So as a requirement, are we limiting the students who are taking those classes and engaging in that advanced level work because they can't afford to take the test? So that is a path to be able to earn college credits in high school, but are we creating a barrier because we require them to take the test? And yet, maybe they don't want to take the test, but they still want an enriched learning experience throughout the year.
So
these are-
Caroline, and one of the biggest things that I think you guys have been, that really fits my view of equity, is that you brought this pre-K thing to life. Because we had so many students looking at the data that came into kindergarten way behind because they had either never had socialization before entering kindergarten, or they couldn't afford daycare, not daycare, but the education outside of before kindergarten. And our goal for pre-K is to get those kids, hopefully get those kids, up to the same level that a lot of our other kindergarten kids are coming in because they've had access to this. Is that pretty fair?
That's correct.
Another tangible example with that pre-K is, so we were able to build that program. Actually, they started before COVID, but unfortunately it couldn't progress. And then this year we were fortunate enough to bring it to light, start it up. We have families that speak multiple languages that aren't English in their home as the predominant one. So it's not fair for me to say, hey, here's your pre-K flyer, and only to have that in Spanish for our families to be able to access that. It doesn't mean that we're totally different curriculum, but we're just saying, hey, mom and dad, here's this in Spanish so that you can understand what's going on and you have a chance at providing for your child in our district. That's just a tangible example.
Mike, I have two questions.
Yeah.
What you're saying, simple presentation for equity is one thing, but why are we paying public money for a company when you seem to have a handle on what needs to be done?
I don't know if I have a full handle on the whole spectrum. I appreciate that I came off the.
Well, it sounds as
Laura, write that down.
It sounds as
Highly
good as the
effective.
presentation you just gave.
Okay. With our partnership with multiple groups coming up.
Which then leads to my second question. Second question is used in critical race theory. Are we cracking a door that we shouldn't crack? Just because our intentions are nice and good now, what about down the road? And then that needs to be explored as well. So
I can speak not to your first question, that'll come up.
Yeah.
But the second one, so for those of you who haven't worked in education, equity, actually, we've been throwing around equity differentiation since special ed law in the 70s. It's, no matter your view on the situation, it's sort of been co-opted into this national conversation and then politicized on both ends of the spectrum with the media. So for us to no longer use that term just because these talking heads are throwing it around, but like if we said, oh, now we're going to use it, we were using it first. Like they're the ones who are making it a mess. I hear you.
we hear it today.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you weren't
yesterday, and
if you weren't in education practices and on a small granular level, talking about the way to reach all these kids, you wouldn't know that too either. And you'd be like, oh man, this is what equity means. It's what I heard on this channel, what I heard on this channel. And they're like this. When we've been talking about this, like when we were all in school learning how to be teachers, they were using that term. So I hear you. We say differentiation a lot too. You'll hear an acronym MTSS, multi-tiered student services. It's related to special ed, giving every kid what they need for.
No, it's like certain words that.
Yeah, they're trigger words. Absolutely.
There's numerous words.
Yeah.
Collaborate. I think of collaborate during World War II, when you're collaborating with the enemy. I don't like the term for that reason, but that's my personal take on it.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a great example, actually. So that's why we engage in that work. We don't. where to begin for that.
But I do think, to Howard's point, we need to now assess at this point, do we need to continue that? I mean, that's a lot of money to be spent on, identifying, hopefully we can, beyond pre-K, beyond, if we have some sort of a language barrier, figuring out better ways to handle that. I mean, I would agree with Howard. I think it sounds like now that the assessment portion of this was done, we should have a pretty good handle on it. Now we need to figure out with Brian and team, like, how much money can we put towards next year and next year and next year to, if there are kids that are struggling. I mean, if we have handicapped kids that, we meet the standard for the accessibility, but maybe it's really not, So I think that's one of the things that we need to really take a hard look at is, do we need to continue that, or can we do a lot of that work internally?
So that kind of leads into where I am.
Good segue.
Where we began and where do we begin? And really it was what Elliot said in the beginning, is recognition, realizing that not all of our students are coming to us equally equipped. And as Mike was saying, in such great examples, it could include culture, it could race, socioeconomics, language, academics, social emotional well-being. It could be a number of things of why our students need support in different ways, or enrichment. We want to challenge our kids as well, as Mike was saying. Also self-assessment, and that's really what we're doing with educational elements, is creating systems to self-assess. We are using surveys, we're using conversations, we're having board meetings, we're giving updates, we're speaking. We have a consortium that's made up of and having these conversations and trying to find out what is this information in different ways, finding out who our students are and who our staff is. We've been talking a lot about providing support and figuring out what the needs are for our children, but what about our staff? They too need specific support on giving specific support to specific students and their needs. And then training. We're using all of this information to inform our training. So yeah, Elements is giving us that framework and structure, organizational structure, but we also have to go out and use that information to identify and determine what are the consultants that can help provide those students with the needs, provide the services that our students need and our staff needs. So next one. So consultant partnerships, and here's education elements. So we were introduced to education elements during when the pandemic hit. We worked very closely with them in the reentry planning. They have a great team responsive approach. They have a framework for organizing teams and work. They shared lots of ideas and templates and resources that we use to facilitate and capture discussions and the problem solving that we were doing during the summer with all of those committees. And then our core project team and administrative team. We had multiple tiers of teams doing the work in very specific and strategic manners. And they're a system-based approach. So we really liked that. And that's why we reached out to them for this equity work, or individual for our students and for our staff.
Laura, was there other groups or companies other than education elements that could have been hired, or were they the only game in town?
Well,
There are others.
yes.
Yeah, there are others.
Did we review any of them?
So I had gone to a training from another organization. We didn't select them, so I'm not gonna say it publicly.
That's fine.
Also, some of the work from NYU Metro Center. So there are other organizations for sure. This very stepwise process was something that I think was attractive because it was a tiered way to sort of start
Mhm.
open it up to the community, and then bring the information back to the core team, which are the action makers, right? So that two-way communication funneling inwards and outwards, I think is something that we really found to be effective during the responsive return planning last summer. And the one thing I will say about education elements is that while we've been very impressed, we've also given them feedback about what we specifically need here. And they've been very responsive to our needs.
But what I'm trying to get at, and there are items that I requested 2 weeks ago, which I have not received, this is the first time I'm hearing how this worked. For the board to review any of these items before this board meeting to be educated ourselves, is that you have this whole process start, and then step to step. Then you had other, I guess, contractors, and then there might have been other costs for different contractors. And I'm not saying that educational elements may not be the best for Millbrook, but I'm trying to figure out and for the rest of the board, is how this all took place, since we were not provided with any information that I had requested through the superintendent 2 weeks ago. Until recently, I've never even seen, I don't even know when this last proposal was put on the website. It wasn't there the other day. These are items that should have been provided for the entire board to review and were requested. And you said would be shown to us by Friday and warrant. And this is,
Yeah, but
these are items,
they were on the board docs, the COSER.
every item. No, you added an extra, I'm not gonna argue.
Because
You
the
added
board
an
president
extra
asked me to
item.
asked me to remove the consortium proposal. And then when you emailed me on Saturday, I put it back there.
Okay, and that's why I didn't see it. Well, okay, and then if the president asked you, there's no communication between him and me about it. But
Well,
these,
at the agenda meeting, what I said was that when I look at that presentation, I see words like oppressive. I can't even think of, I don't have it in front of me. And I said, that can't be a part of, where we're going. That's where people are getting this idea that suddenly we're off doing, we have an SRO and we might have to get rid of them because, police are bad. I don't think I told you to take that off. I think I told you that that's the kind of stuff that needs to be, that's not us. Now, of course, discrimination is not going to be tolerated. Racism is not going to be tolerated. And if it happens, it needs to be brought up, but we can't have, it seems like we went and we did an assessment at the beginning. Then we had this second thing that basically looked like, now we're going to go out and see how we can find trouble. And that was my request. And it was at the agenda meeting that we went through this.
Harry, you're breaking up quite a bit.
well, my point is, if we would have seen it as a board ahead of time, but the documents speak for themselves, is the proposal, and the district hired these people, these terms, that's a problem, and there's no doubt about it, whether it was meant to be something or not. I haven't read it, but these are documents that we hired this company, and if it says these things, I haven't read it, then that's an issue, and the public should be made aware of these.
So the proposal was shared on Friday. It was removed based on the request of the board president. I put it back because you wanted it back, which makes sense. It's an administrative. Yes, I agree that there are liens in the proposal, and living through it and working with education elements, we're working towards revising it and refining it to be aligned with what Millbrook is defining equity, educational equity. So yes, there are words like marginalized students face deliberate actions and biases, dismantle the oppressive systems, structural racism. These are not our words. This is a boilerplate, And even in conversation with Red Hook and BOCES, they too had conversations with education elements and saying, this is not aligned, this is not our definition of equity. Will you work with us in revising the proposal and revising the timeline? And Gabby Hewlett, who is our consultant, is very open to it. She too had admitted that there are acknowledged that this is not representative of the districts here that she's working with. And it's,
And that is why I said those things need to be removed, because that is not a document for Millbrook. That is a document, as you said, is their boilerplate. And I would have expected after, if they had two other districts basically tell them you're putting stuff out there that's just gonna cause hell, because it's not in Red Hook or wherever, and it's not Millbrook. It's, I don't know why we had that stuff out there.
This is a document from Education Elements, then this is a term that I would not think this district would want to use. Whether they work with you or not, it's already in their boilerplate.
Exactly. That's why I said that document is not, it shouldn't be presented as it looked like to me, that this is Millbrook's, direction, because it is not.
Okay.
I have a question, as Dave and I are new, and I did watch the presentation back in real time, back in December. I'm confused about is we're now asking questions of the administration, why did we contract with them? Did the board not approve this before we entered into a contract?
I don't know. It was not brought before the board. I don't know if it had to be. Again, with the COSARs, the payback, the differentials of money, certainly there's a threshold. And of course, our finance officer is not here tonight. He's on vacation, so he can't answer those questions. Whether it should have been or not have been, I assume, I would hope it should not have been, but it was not brought.
Oh,
Well, it was, it wasn't presented as a proposal. It was, here's what Education Elements can do with us. But quite honestly, it didn't sound anything like that boilerplate. It was, we can help identify if there are kids that are, having trouble because of dyslexia, and what would be the right, new approaches for Millbrook to help those kids. That was the way, and it wasn't, the money wasn't presented because I believe this was done on a grant. But this follow-on document, boilerplate, looked it looked like a whole different structure to me. I don't remember if we did it in executive session, or I thought it was in public session, where they just came in and said, here's how we're going to assess where Millbrook is right now. And then that went to phase 2, which is, then that boilerplate thing came out and it looks terrible.
so that's what we're working with Education Elements in reviewing and revising this proposal so that it reflects the Millbrook's work around equity and personalizing education for students and staff.
And I think that goes back to, we need to really assess whether we should continue with them. I mean, if that's their boilerplate, as Howard said, that's their practice, right? Now maybe that was intended for different types of schools, other schools, I don't know. But reading that, and it's a fairly high level document, but reading that now, to me, that says they have a whole different practice / agenda that isn't Millbrook. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sure they want to work with us because, there's a lot of money involved, but I'm not sure that that they are the right, you know, if we need them, or if, you know, if we need a consultant to help us with this, that's one thing. But to me personally, and I'm, you know, not speaking for the board, from my standpoint, if that's their normal approach to things, you know, I'm not sure that that's a good fit. I think that's something that you guys should be able to need to convince us that this is a good idea, but with them. Anyway.
So I just want to end that last slide was that at Elements is the toolkit, and that we seek other consultants and vendors and services from other folks for those specialized pieces, such as Ross Green and his collaborative problem solving or solutions, such as Yale Ruler for emotional and social support, for Bellingham to help students who have special needs. So they are helping frame and organize this work and keeping us on task and providing resources and connections to other folks who are doing this work. And then we seek out the specialized tools from using the toolkit. So our work this year, we've spoken about it already, Education Elements is 2 years, $54,000 per year, using grant money through a COSER in partnership with BOCES and Red Hook. It was really starting out with assessing where we are as a school district, assessing where the administrative team is, where the core team is, and then eventually reaching out to community and family and conversations. There's that equity inventory. So we're trying to see, look at our systems too. Are we putting up barriers like Caroline was saying about paying for IB tests? Are we doing those moves and prohibiting kids from reaching their fullest? So that's really what we're trying to do, a deep dive into Millbrook and seeing who our students are and what they need, and find ways to either remove those barriers or find opportunities that will lift our students and staff. And then now we're on pause and we're having this conversation to see, you know, to answer questions, receive feedback, see where we want to go next.
Is there a cost to being on pause? Is there any detriment to our students that we're taking the time to reflect on this?
A cost to the pause? No. Our timeline is off too. So Education Elements is not, we're not beholden to that timeline. The money is there, but when it's used, it's used. There's not like by January, it disappears. Well, we have to use Education Elements services by then. Because of the pandemic, because of our pause, because of just life has been very difficult and chaotic, that we took a little longer doing things and a little shorter in other areas. So it's sort of been ebbing and flowing just because of the landscape right now.
All right, Laura, it's a 2-year agreement, right?
Correct.
So we are losing by putting it on hold because time is, you know, going away. They're not going to extend our time because we paused. So just pointed that out. Now, is there, you know, to Perry's point, we did sign a 2-year agreement. You know, I'm not saying this will happen, but if we decide that this isn't the right route, do we know what an exit plan could be? Was that looked at before we signed the contract, or?
No, we did not.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? So it says like we're partnering with Education Elements to do a SCAP. And I know you said a Ross one, I can't remember all the names. I know I've heard of them before. Are those going to be like an additional cost on top of, like, I've heard some teachers talk about some of those things that they already do. So is that just a regular training, or because this is more on like an equity scale, would that be an additional? So like we're going to pay them 100 or whatever it is. Is this going to be like an additional?
Yeah, all of these trainings are additional, even be pre Ed Elements. We've been doing the work and paying for training and professional development.
Okay, so but it's not like this is like an extra, so we do this all along. Okay,
Oh, correct.
Laura, I know there was a survey sent out to parents. Was it just parents no, if it was also anyone other than,
It was just parents.
okay,
And there was a small response, just I think because of the timing.
right.
And we would love, if we decide to move forward, launch it, but with different language in it, more aligned to who we are as Millbrook. It had a lean about power and privilege and race, and we want to change, redefine that for us so that it reflects who we are and the work that we're doing here.
Do you remember roughly how many parents responded?
Only 10%.
Yeah, something.
We looked at, we
very
actually met
small.
with Gabby Hewitt earlier. Had the same conversation you're having with us.
And
We
we're
had-
doing like 90.
We had with Gabby earlier this week to be like, hey,
Right.
your prime examples, which we worked at was in inner city areas previously, so some of what you see that they did as examples is for that sort of environment, with that sort of issues. So I think that's why you see some of the charged language that's in there. But as Laura's pointed out, they're extremely malleable, and Gabby worked with us through the pandemic to re-strategize and come back in. So we have this relationship. And she sat down with us the other day, like, we're gonna meet you all on what you need. So like what works for your community, what's gonna make sense? How do we wanna ask things to get the feedback that we're looking for without clouding it with some of this charged language?
So can I ask, I mean, if we've been working with them to reassess this or reword it or however you want to describe it, why did we put that document out there? Basically saying this is what they're gonna do. I mean, that document has caused more angst in the district and more emails and phone calls and, stopping me in Morona's to say, what are you guys doing? And, we've been saying from the beginning, this is a matter of how do we, if there are kids that need special help to get into kindergarten on a better level, great, we're gonna do it. We will never tolerate racism. We'll never tolerate, racist behavior. But, to put if we're really been working with these guys for a while to reassess this, how did that thing get out there?
You mean the proposal, Perry?
Just so that-
All the wording in it about, all the toxic wording.
It's the survey.
Are you referring to the survey, Carrie?
No. The document that I didn't say pull it. I said you better get rid of a lot of that language. That document. How did we end up with that? Their quote unquote boilerplate when that is not, and it sounds like you guys have been working with them for months to clean that up so it doesn't reflect any of the non-Millbrook. This needs to be us. And if you guys have been working with them for months to do that, how did this other one stay in play?
Proposal's dated 25/20. So if you've been working with them, did anybody ever read this proposal? Once we got it, it says prepared for Millbrook Central School District, a Dutchess County BOCES component. So it was issued on November 25th of last year, and it's been sitting around in our files, I guess, ever since. And I assume they planned on doing what it said in the proposal, and which is we started to do with the questionnaire.
All right. Anyway, I think, that's where it leads us to, do we, and I think we need to understand more about, the two payments. If we do, cut bait at this point, what happens to the second payment? Not saying we're going to do that, but we need to understand that. But, this thing was attached to the agenda last week. at our agenda meeting. I mean, if we've been working with them all, I would have assumed they would have had something that was much more focused on Millbrook.
And that's what our plan is, Gabby, moving forward, is that this is not reflective of the work that we want to do or have been doing. And to make it, to work with Gabby and education elements in creating a plan that speaks to Millbrook and to the community, the staff and the students.
Personally, I'm glad we had this conversation. If I had my way, I wish it would have been before we made any mention or survey or anything else, just to kind of educate the public. So I'm glad we're having it.
And, you know, lessons learned, we're all learning this about equity. I know critical race theory wasn't a thing at a moment, oppression, blaming us, like all of these things when we started entering that this is not why we were getting into it. We were getting equity to make sure that our students and staff had everything they needed to reach their potential. And then, like Mike was saying, it became weaponized, it became charged, it became triggers for people. And that was not our intention. Our intention is to always be inclusive, to listen to feedback, to do the best we can for the school district and beyond. And so that's why we're taking steps back. We're working with education elements to redefine our journey together in the equity work.
And I hope you understand where the board is coming from, that, you know, it's odd that somebody came in to do work in Millbrook, had a set of terminology that on a boilerplate, and a year later, they're still using that boilerplate, which if I have a boilerplate for me, this is the way I do business. I go in, I do this, I do this, I do this. That's a boilerplate. To me, a boilerplate says, you know, basically the mode of operation of whoever you're hiring. And you know, it strikes me as odd that they can, you know, throw away their boilerplate and change everything so that, you know, suddenly they came in with one set of, hey, we're going to go look at these things, we're going to go not, you know, get rid of this, get rid of that. And then now they're going to, you know, refocus on a whole different level, on a whole different plan of attack. So anyway, I think we really need to assess whether, you know, they are the right group to be doing this. If after a year we're still talking about oppression and all this other stuff in Millbrook. Okay. Any other, you want to keep going or?
Yeah. We're talking about our next steps. The administration spends a great deal of time talking about what we would like the journey of a graduate from Millbrook to look like. So what are the experiences that we would want every child to have? How do we make sure that we give them access to that? So that's often the conversation. And one of the things that came up through the pandemic and has sort of grown a life of its own is the concept of win, which is what I need. So we created win periods throughout the day where students can either be accelerated or they can receive remedial support, whatever they need. They could receive social emotional groups with one of our counselors or psychologists. So it's a what I need concept and it's very individualized. What we hope, right, is that if we can create this very personalized learning community here, then when every child wins, right, Millbrook wins. So how do we do that? We engage in continuous self-assessment so that we can always be responsive to our community. Totally hearing all of the feedback regarding Ed Elements as a partnership, but one of the things that's really important is to realize sometimes we do need an outside lens to kind of shine light, because if we knew of something better to do in a particular area, we would be doing, you know, sort of that blindsided. Once we have the information from our self-assessment, we can then provide tailored or specialized training. Like Laura had mentioned, right now, we know that many of our students are struggling. They've just come through a pandemic, which I'd like to say that it's completely over, but I'm not confident in that, and have suffered some trauma, right? There's a collective trauma that we have suffered. So being able to create social emotional supports for students using the Young Ruler Project, or even recognizing that we have a disproportionate number of students from special education services who are receiving disciplinary consequences, and looking at that very differently and following the models of Ross Green and engaging in collaborative problem solving, being able to create solutions with students instead of imposing unilateral consequences and punishing, so to speak. It's about redirecting, building skills, and closing a skills gap that prevents them from being successful. Just a couple of examples. So we want to continue to engage the community. We want to hear feedback. We want to hear a different perspective than we may have on what our students need, what our community needs. And what we're looking for is to put all of these pieces together and have it be a long-term build out. So a strategic plan, years, what do we want a journey of our graduate to look like? And how do we create that? And having it be a systems approach, stepwise process to get there. So we hear the feedback, certainly loud and clear. I think we have definitely made our own feedback known to education elements. But these are our goals, and it's about students and them to win and be successful no matter where they're starting from.
Okay.
The feedback that, did you, like the kind of feedback that we're talking about now, is that some of the feedback that you gave them? Like, because like one of their first sentences in that thing doesn't talk about equity as we're thinking about it. So is that like some of the feedback that you guys gave them?
Yes, not only through our consortium partners, through Douglas Bose's, but we actually had through it. And she was extremely responsive to our feedback, but specifically about the language, about the fact that, you know, equity has been it's been co-opted, and unfortunately the pure of heart version of equity that we're looking at is not necessarily what is being branded out there, I'll say. And we're not looking to further, you know, alienate or marginalize anyone. We're looking to bring in the community and make sure that all of our students have, you know, a phenomenal experience.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for from the board for any of the administration? Okay. All right. So when can we see? I mean, you guys are going to have to come in with, look, this is the way, this is what it's been changed to. This is what we're going to go for, specific things we're going to focus on. It's not, we're not focusing on curriculum, we're focusing on access methods. We're going to do this and this and this, you know, specific ways in which, if you still believe in them, we need to see specific, you know, this is what educational equity is going to do. You know, and we need to, as a board, decide whether this is just causing too much trouble in, you know, it's confusing people, it's confusing our students, their teachers. We can't have that. So, and I'm still personally very nervous about the way the wording reflects their normal practices. That's just, it's just very concerning. Okay. All right. Unless anybody has anything else, we do have our architect on. I'd rather, if no one has any trouble with it, I'd rather switch to the facilities projects. So we can spend some time on that while we have the architect with us. I think it's Mike. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here and my partner John's on the screen.
Okay. All right. So we'll switch to number 4 on the agenda. And we'll go back to the stimulus funding. So this is really focused more on the projects that we have at Elm and the high school. Some of the concerns that we have over the rising cost of materials and what we might have to do with those projects, since they are limited to a 150 and a 100K project, facility project. Is that a pretty good version of why we're talking about this tonight?
Yes, hoping we'd like to project on the screen and just talk and walk
Okay.
our thoughts on where we stand in the bidding market today. So, while we're getting them up there, the project at the high school is simpler. It's the $100,000 annual project to be completed by next June 30. And it's very similar to what we just accomplished in Alden. This was 2019, 2020, I can't remember. But the idea is to take the broad access, the main entrance, divide it into with a concrete block wall, take the inner set of vestibule doors and place them back. So you've got basically 2 quarters. One can be secured with access control at the exterior entrance door, as well as a view window or a reception window halfway down, and then access control before anybody gets into the school from there. That project is pretty straightforward. We accomplished it at Alden for the $100,000 budget. And actually Alden, we ran into asbestos that was abated, and we also included in that project brand new set of doors. So, and we accomplished that for $100,000. This project is actually simpler because we're taking the existing doors and just setting them back 15 or 20 feet. So we don't have the added expense of the storefront. We don't have the asbestos. So to think that we can't accomplish almost that same scope for that same budget, even in these times where materials are hard to deliver, escalating prices are impacting everything, and it's hard for contractors in some instances to the workers. I think we can nail that project. I think to give us a little bit of wiggle room on bid day, we want to take a couple of the components in the project and set them aside as alternates. That'll give you the option of either accepting them within the contract if they're affordable, putting them out further, or acquiring them by under some other way. For instance, the access control and the fire alarm is probably the 2 easiest components. Those 2 are probably valued somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000 worth of work. You've got service providers currently that work for the district that handle those type of systems. So if anything, it would be easy to pull that out, just contract with them directly and let them follow behind the general contractor and work with those systems after the fact. The other thing is we've got part of the project scope is to replace the handicap access ramp, concrete ramp at the curb cut, which is deteriorated. And then also we earmarked about 4 walk there's best with it. That work, I'd like to do that as an alternate as well. I think the concrete access ramp is probably about a $3,000 ticket. Hopefully we can get it fitted within the project. The rest of the concrete repair work, I think we can use a unit price and then just accomplish as much as we can, given the budget. And if we can do 200 square feet, great. If we're limited to 100, possibly we can do the entire thing. So I think that project, like I say, it's pretty straightforward. And with those few alternates, just so we can control the award at bid time, I don't think we'll have any problem there. Yeah, there you go.
You want to put the high school or out
If
first?
it's just, I'll just back up real briefly and just point out some of the projects over at the high school up there, just the floor plan.
But the high school project is not, because we also have that big concrete ramp that goes out the side of the high school, or sort of out the side. That's really got some, seems to have some major issues, with especially where the railings go in. That's not part of this project.
Sorry, Mike.
That's okay.
That is part of the project. That was the third to do by square foot.
So we don't know.
Yeah, if you actually go, if you go to the, I think keep going, you're gonna find the set plan. Yeah, here's the site plan. So that entrance, and then some of the, anything, we'll just put a unit, we'll ask for a unit price, we'll take it as far as we can. And if the ramp itself is the most important component of that, that's where the money would be utilized as it's available. You could back up one or two, there's the floor plan. Oh,
From here?
there you go. Yeah, the upper right-hand plan, a lot going on there, but that kind of gives you the idea that that's the main entrances exist. The exterior doors at the bottom of that plan are existing. The concrete block wall that would subdivide that space into the passageway on the left would become the secure entrance with access control at the exterior door. You walk into the lobby, there's a secure window with a pass tray about halfway down the lobby. That's where anybody coming in the building would transact with the receptionist. She would then buzz them into the main part of the building through the upper set of doors. That interior set of doors were the lobby, the window itself would be ballistic, and then we would add a film to the interior with glazing on the interior set of doors. So a truly secure lobby. Very little impact to the floors, ceilings, mainly patching. And the other, as I said, the other impact would just be relocating like the exit signs, the access controls, and adding some fire alarm devices. The course is a little more complex to accomplish the same thing. It should be the other attachment.
Oh, the other attachment, yeah, we got it.
Right. We make the kids call it that anyway, scare them. It's hard not to say it. We met on site, boy, must have been back in April or March even. Go to the floor. Then. Going right there. I'll point it out on the screen. This is the existing vestibule that's in the corner of the. It's kind of the main entrance to the building. So it would be handicap accessible because at the far end where you're entering now, you've got to go up a flight of stairs, about a 5-foot differential. There's no way to get a ramp or a lift in there. So the idea is to make this the ADA entrance and also make it a secure vestibule. And what we're doing is maintaining the vestibule as is, controlling the inner and outer set of access doors. But there's an alcove there just above the vestibule that we would build an exterior wall. That's the vertical wall above those doors to create a secure vestibule with a pass window, a door directly into the corridor space. The vestibule itself, as I was sitting here, I was looking at the ceiling. About the size of this area of ceiling. It's about 80. So it's not huge. But it's in a kind of a restricted corner of the building. Getting to it is going to disrupt the site. The equipment and such is going to probably dig up the asphalt walk and the lawn area. So it's all going to have to be replaced, even if we don't want to modify it to any great extent. So I believe the estimates we put together for that building is about $175,000, excluding any improvements to the site. That's excluding the replacing the concrete walks in a more kind of formal entranceway. So again, to move forward the project, to deliver a secure vestibule,
The idea is pretty much like the high school, take the access control, take the fire alarm, bid that separately or as a separate bid item so we could parse it out to your preferred service vendor. And a couple other things, the site work itself, the improvements to the sidewalk, we can do just as little as we possibly need to. Because once we get it's a question of where do you end? We go down the ramp, we need to get up to the asphalt. It creates an issue with a catch basin and a ponding area. Because now we have a catch basin and a new storm line that connects to the existing. Again, just rising costs that may not be affordable. The other issue we ran into at Elm, once we got into the design is, again, we've got hazardous materials to abate. That's the caulking on the exterior windows, as well as the overextending eaves around the perimeter of the building. So we've got to deal with that even before we can start construction. So if we separate the fire alarm, the access control, potentially the mechanical unit, there's a split unit. We need to introduce ventilation and heat obviously into the space. And then, as I said, segregate the site work. I think we can bring that project in at about 175, a little over what the budget is. But that's what we have to work with. The idea was it's been approved now from SED, and the idea would be to get it out on the street, open bids, probably mid-September, and then present to the board the quotes, and then what the options are moving forward at the September board meeting.
Is this something, and we might have talked about, somehow got to do it, it can be done like over the Christmas break or Thanksgiving, like do we, or you?
No, this, well, the entrance, the high school work, except for the concrete work, I can see that happening. They could get in. There's wet work, there's noisy work, there's wet work, and then there's the clean work. The noisy work is cutting the opening for the window. The wet work is building the concrete block wall. If we had to wait till December, they could probably accomplish the bulk of it over the Christmas break. Otherwise, we could schedule it so that they're doing the cutting on Saturday and they're laying the block up maybe in October weekend. And then the rest of the work is relatively clean and they could do that. Elm Drive, that there's no way, that's probably a 3-month project, not necessarily every day full time, but they're going to be in there for 2 weeks getting the foundations in and 2 weeks running the brick and putting the roof on, another 2 weeks doing the interior fit out, and then probably a pause before the doors and the hardware come and wrap it up. So ideally, and obviously you need to do that and when the weather is when you can work outside.
Right.
So you probably want to start that as soon as you could. And I can see it working right through the December break. Maybe there's a pause and as we're waiting for more materials, come back in February or March in the next recess period.
Hey, is Mike Sotero still there?
Yeah.
Right here.
Hey, Mike. Hey, are you okay with, once we basically take that side entrance offline for whatever periods of time, do you know how you're going to work around that? Like when the buses come in and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we started to talk about the options for that. Right now, it's not used often. BA access is nice there, but we have multiple end of the building which are accessible for ADA. So I feel like we're in an okay spot once we find out officially what the timeline is. I think besides seeing each day. So I think we're going to be okay.
All right. So, I mean, so if the project had, I don't know, 2 weeks where they had to cut off that side entrance, you could work around that.
Are you saying if I had to shut that exit down for 2 weeks, could we do that?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
I do have a question. The ramp, the ADA ramp. Now, I'm not an architect. If I was looking at that looking at it, it looks like they designed it not only to be the handicapped, or maybe that was just a fortuitous thing that they were able to get away with, but it looks like it was a way of bringing up equipment and things into the music room and the stage area, like a good service ramp to me. And also was used as a handicap. Now, just gravity itself, that ramp looks like it's going to be a problem no matter over time, no matter what we put in there. Yes, no.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if the rationale for it was equipment, because actually with your curb cut, you're accessible to the main entrance, right?
Right.
But other than to get to the upper level, like suppose the stage.
Yes, because it goes right into the stage area.
It's, if we can't, it's gonna deteriorate. It'll cost you more every year.
So I'm wondering, and I don't even know if we've even thought of this, if it was possible and how much trouble it would be through SED to try to make a different handicapped access without such a long ramp, and then use that just as an extra ramp because it's deteriorating.
Yeah,
Eventually, we're gonna have to
back door
fix
by
it
the
anyway. You thought about
You
that?
have the back door by the cafeteria, it goes straight in.
Yeah, and the road goes right
And From
around.
the handicap spaces or from the parking lot, that's the easiest road to get into high school anyway. That's the easiest door, I
Right.
mean, not road, that's the easiest door to get into high school. For a handicapped person, I would use the back door by the cafeteria and go right in.
Just something to discuss down the road, because rather than sink so much money into that long cement ramp, and I think it's gonna be a maintenance headache every 8 to 10 years anyway. Probably, it's gonna start to deteriorate. It's a lot of cement. It is what it is, but it's something for us to look at as a board. All right, thanks.
From a budget standpoint, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So we're talking 175. And we had a 150 budget. We're talking 175, but we're also talking about some other stuff that has to get done that will kind of not put in the project, like the electronics and that aspect. Is that, am I okay on that?
What
Say it again.
you would need, yeah, we would need to include it. We would bid it. But it may be that if you can't afford it, you have to find another means of procuring it. So if there's a maintenance budget, or if there's money's available. One thing I through this, the other option, and we cover any of those contingent on to think of like years, the 2022 $100,000 outlay project to capture those money to pick up whatever we can't afford in either one of these two projects. And how then I would go about that, I'm not exactly. If the money's there's a way to figure out how it can be got to meet the need.
But the bottom line is it's a total of 175, or it's 175 plus some other stuff we got to cover.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's 175 excludes the site and excludes the fire alarm, the access to the split. So there's a deficit there regardless.
So do we understand how much that is?
15, 20 for the split, the fire alarm, the access, and about 30,000 on the site. About 50 grand.
So we're about really total of 225 to get everything done. Or am I completely confused?
It's hard to hear you, Perry.
So is the total price 225, or is the total, or 250, or is the total price 175? I'm just having trouble following.
It's
Everything. Are we all at 225?
It's 175 if we items that I mentioned, the fire alarm, the access.
And that stuff's another 50.
Yeah.
So all in, we're 225.
225 total, yes.
And do we have any, I mean, first of all, I never quite understand why, you know, we have a 100K project or 150K project. Is there some penalty for going over it, or we just have to find additional money to cover it?
The $100,000 annual outlay, the advantage of that is you're reimbursed the following year. As
Okay.
opposed- I think if you exceed that, I mean, there would be no reimbursement.
Okay, and same with the 150?
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the 150 is 175.
Yeah, it's 175.
Yeah, it's 175.
Mike,
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to say, when we looked at all this in April, the high school was to come in at $100,000 and the Elm was supposed to come in at the 175. But in the last, 8 or 10 months, everything, the price of material, that's why there's so much now. When we originally looked at these projects, they were both supposed to be within the budget. But with the price of everything, contractors telling us they can't give us prices yet because the price of material has gone up so much. That's why these projects. Not that we looked at these knowing we couldn't do them. We looked at them knowing we could do it. The last 8 everything's gone through the roof, and that's why we're where we are now.
No, yeah, I'm following. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, if let's say we go and you know, take it out of the general reserve or take it out of something to cover this, are we going to get penalized for doing that? I mean, you know, the last thing in the world we want to do is cut corners on the fire alarm system. So, I mean, we definitely, you know, we have to do this stuff. So really our two choices are don't do it and don't do any of it, I think, or do it all and find a way to pay for it. Now, has Brian looked at possible financial options for this?
Well, the one thing we talked about was pushing some of the work out to capture the next fiscal year's 100K project. So
Barry, there was reasoning around the caps, and I'm trying to remember back. I don't know if Jen, if you remember, but there was reasoning, and we had asked the same questions that they wanted to keep it within those realms.
Yeah, I mean, so again, we need to see if Brian's got any, you know, creative ideas on how to cover that. I mean, I don't know how we, like the other 75 or the other, whatever it is, the other 50, I don't know how we push that out since that's like the fire alarm systems. So, you know, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of, unless we somehow hold the cost until then, but then, you know, then we're behind the 8 ball and, you know, now we only have 50K and 100K project to do work.
I think the fire alarm system or the access control are crucial to accomplish what you're trying to do. So it's a service that you could hire the vendor outside of the contract, just like you do now. Access control on a door, you call the people that you're used to dealing with and they install it. So that would be the one way to procure it immediately. It's the site work, things where we could push into the second cycle, especially for, you know, the $100,000 project for next year.
So, Laura, has Brian looked at options for us financially to cover this?
it was more around that over 2 years. That was the creative way. I also think he reached out to grants for these grants, these stimulus grants, if we could use some of that money, but they do not have for that yet. So we're waiting for a response.
I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense to push it out to a second year, because then we're going to end up with, you know, what are we going to do with it? Now we got 50K less than our 100K project. What are we going to do with that? Unless we turn the other, you know, the 175, we use the other 50K for, I don't know, for next year's 175. It just seems like it's not a good way to do this. So, I mean, like I said, I think one of our options is to look at the reserve. I hate doing that, given that we've got so much work, other work that needs to be done. That's going to be a much bigger project. But to me personally, I don't like the idea of, we'll come back later and do this. Because then we'll find some reason why we don't do it. So what do we need tonight, Laura? Is this just so we can talk about the overage? I mean, I don't know how we can really go much further without Brian being here.
Yeah, I can go back when Brian's back, we'll have a conversation, share this conversation, see if we can come up with other ways to the board.
So I think one of the other options that we do have is that we could at least get this on the street, get it bid, and really see what the numbers come in at. Right now, we're really just working off of a select group that gave us numbers. And they were even reluctant to give us some numbers because they were having a hard time getting them. The fluctuation of the market right now is weekly. So I think if we push at least to get numbers, it'll give us a good indication as to whether we can move forward or not. Again, I think the high school is, like Mike said, a very good possibility that we could get that done. It's more on the Elm that the numbers could fluctuate greatly just because of the detail in a small area of work. It's a small area, but it's very complicated.
So what is it from a board standpoint, conceptually, to me, I don't know how we can make any decisions without knowing, number one, what the real number, like what's it really going to cost us. I mean, it might hit the streets and turns out windows tripled and doors tripled and we can't do, now it's 300 grand. So I think, to me, again, my opinion is we should get accurate prices. We also need to have Brian sit down and say, look, I can, we can separate out that part, but we can get that paid by so and such, over here in this account, or, we can go forward for, I don't know, a grant, whatever, to do the rest of it. I'm curious, we don't really need a vote, but we need, I think, conceptual approval for these guys to move forward. So I'll just go around. Chris Rosenberg.
No, I'm all for getting the numbers. We need those in order to make a decision.
Chris?
You're breaking up again, Carrie.
I think he's calling on me. I agree. I agree with you. Chris. Yep, let's get some numbers.
Howard?
Yep, let's get the numbers and if it's feasible to even do. If it keeps varying or if they can't give it, we may be forced to hold off, and then hopefully things get more normal, if there is such a term.
David?
I agree. We need numbers to do anything.
Yeah, it's going to be bizarre. I'm doing a large project at home, and lumber costs started dropping nicely. I was all excited, and then I went to talk to the guy about the windows, and he went, "Oh, Jesus, man. God, man, come on, you can hit me with something nice." All right, so let's plan on as soon as possible, because we don't want this dragging out. We start getting into cold weather, so as soon as we possibly can get numbers on, what it really costs us and possibilities for funding any overage, or funding a part of it, whether it's the electronics or whatever. And then let's get it back into the board so we can hopefully move forward on it. All right.
If we've got a week back, you got the answers you need before we put it on the street. That still gives us a comfortable bid period to come back in September and present numbers to you.
Okay, good, excellent. All right, now I hate to do it, but we back up in the agenda. Let's talk about COVID stimulus funding.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. So this our conversation. And so here at a board meeting, we're receiving funding from two sources to help address the impacts of COVID on our students and school districts. Part of the criteria for making decisions of how we should or could use this funding included feedback from our stakeholders, all of our stakeholders. So on July 22nd, we launched a public input survey called Through. We got lots of good feedback to the tool that we use, as well as how we could or should use this money, this funding. So just a reminder, we're getting funding for the coronavirus relief, and that is $377,000, $78,000. And then we have a rescue plan, and that's $48,000. And this is over a 3-year period. And part of that ARP, the American Rescue Plan, we have to make sure that we're allocating at least 20% for schooling loss. So in the thought exchange, we asked the question, we are scheduled to receive $1.2 million of federal COVID stimulus money to be spent over the next 3 years. How could this money be used to respond to the many needs of students and staff as a result of the pandemic? So here's just a breakdown of the process. Participation, we had 276 participants. We had 285 thoughts and 8,000 ratings. So good numbers, good feedback. We were a little worried because it was during the summer, but people were, again, jazzed about the tool and to be able to be part of the process. And so we had 77% of those numbers were parents, 20% were staff teachers, 1% community member, and 2% other. 97% were English-speaking families and 3% of our Spanish. This is a word cloud. Words that are powerful in the responses, that show some weight in the responses. And you'll see mental, social, emotional well-being, activities, air, classrooms, academic, and health in our word clouds, showing those pieces. And these were some of the key thoughts that were pulled from the thought exchange. It was about before and after school programs targeted for English and math skills and enrichment, as well as social emotional needs. That second one is also another social emotional socialization and after school programs. So those were big key thoughts and points that were pulled. Here are the generated themes: mental health, air, extra help. And then of course the extra help goes across with classes and support responses. And then some thoughts that were pulled around mental health: more outdoors time, more play, physical activities and outdoor learning on school grounds, as well as field trips, improves their mental and physical health, more mental health assistance in social events. Be nice to see students have someone to talk to when they're anxious. Adding another elementary school psychologist. We have Tanya, who's across all of the elementary grades, and specifically post-pandemic, we have higher needs for students. And then mental support for students, support for coping mechanisms, additional counselors. And these were highly rated, 3.9, 3.8, 3.7 out of 4. Then there were thoughts on air, proper air and ventilation systems, question mark, new HVAC systems for germ-free air and efficient heat and AC systems, air conditions in classrooms. And then there are additional more books in child's hands, more specialized teaching areas to help support struggling students. Again, high, 3.9, 3.9, 3.7. Also that were at the top was extra help for our kids. After school programs, tutoring and extra help for students that fall behind, I would think, as well as challenging our students who are high flyers and need challenges as well. Extra help, so students who were academically can catch up.
So Laura, so this money, can it be,
So just make this point, a key component of our plan is to address our student needs with this funding. Based on our community feedback and administrative recommendations, we've identified a few areas we believe where additional funding can continue to support students in our district. So we'd like to focus on additional student supports in terms of summer programs, after-school programs, social emotional wellness, and professional development. We'd also like to address ventilation and air conditioning. Not sure if this is the space and the funding that we can or should use, but at least to talk about maybe a future project and something we wanted to start sooner than later. So
Laura,
proposed spending, we have
Laura?
acceleration of learning. We have after-school programs, homework help, summer scholars, materials, resources, staff, beyond the school walls, providing field trips across grades, very strategic, intentional field trips that we want our students to experience here in Millbrook. So whether it's trips to Storm King, New York City museums, local Carey Institute, and it's free, but really setting up from pre-K to 12, what do we want our students to experience while they're here with us? Student enrichment programs and interactive classroom technology upgrades. Then we have social emotional support, possibly an elementary school counselor, an extra one, flexible seating, mindful rooms and sensory rooms, health and safety, talking about HVAC again, PPE and mitigation, additional custodian or mason's helper. And then professional development, we spoke about ruler and Ross Green, collaborative and proactive solutions. So some of these ideas most definitely came from our thought exchange and our multiple conversations with the administrative team. This is great, we're happy to get this funding, so how can we really use it in a strategic and intentional manner to support our students?
So Laura,
And this is just, we spoke to this last time we were here, is that we're planning on full in-person in September. That's what we're planning for. We want our Glazers back. We'll continue to monitor the state guidelines, Department of Health guidelines, and follow them and pivot and respond as we get them. And we'll continue updating our reentry plan. That's also part of the requirement of this funding. And so here's our timeline. Here we are, August 3rd. The administrative team shares recommendations. The deadline for the CRRSA is August 15th. And we requested an extension to September 30th for the ARP, which gives us a little more time to think and project where we want to put this funding.
You had also said, Laura, I think that, like, say we submitted, because August 15th, we're gonna board them, that's in here, that we could like tweak it along the way, right?
Absolutely. I went into the portal just to see what kind of information we had to provide. It's very general. It may say after school programming, and we could project the amount that we want to put in there for now. But I believe in the guidelines and in meetings, there is some flexibility in we can change it if we find that there's a higher need that was anticipated or something that came to our attention later on after the submission, we could revise it.
hey Laura, can we use this
Because who
money?
knows, right? We're allocating money when we haven't even seen our kids yet.
Yeah.
So they may come with a lot of things that we didn't anticipate, whether it's a schooling loss or a different kind of social emotional that we didn't expect, or so we would have to respond when we see them as well.
Under the social emotional support, are all of those bullets just for elementary school? So there's elementary school counselor, but then the flexible seating, mindful room, sensory room.
Yeah,
That's all elementary?
So mindfulness, we talked about having a mindfulness room, like a fully built out mindfulness room in every building.
yeah, every building.
Okay, every
Sensory
building.
room is probably not really
Right.
appropriate for the older
No, I get
students,
it.
and flexible seating would be awesome. But to be able to do that across the
Okay,
entire district might be a really heavy lift, but we definitely talked about putting mindfulness rooms.
okay. And I know, Tanya Pulver, because you mentioned, I'm only mentioning her name because it's in here, is highly, overburdened, I'm sure. don't we also have a mental health counselor
Aster.
through Aster? Okay, so is that person, which schools does that person serve?
All schools.
All
Yep,
schools?
she's based here. Her name is Danielle.
Okay,
But
Yeah, but she has minimal, so she has very specific targeted supports that she can provide at the elementary school.
okay. Yes, no, I agree wholeheartedly with anything social, emotional and mental health. I'm just wondering, when you mentioned an additional school psychologist, is it for everything? Is it for the testing and the counseling, or do you really need someone more to provide more counseling? Or is it both?
Yeah, so there are some requirements for elementary counseling that are expected, and right now we have so I feel like it can, maybe that's something we can discuss down the road, but we're definitely looking at another person because Tanya is only one person and she's currently doing all of it.
Right.
And a school counselor would be able to do some of the counseling.
Right, I think
and we're also
that's very important.
seeing if that person could be more of a SEL, just sort of coordinate a pre-K through 12 continuum of the supports that we're giving. So that they're sort of monitoring it and seeing if there are any holes in the plan, if there are any areas that we need to boost. Right now, it's sort of building specific, so looking at it in a more cohesive,
When we talk,
comprehensive manner. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Lord. Something to keep in mind when we talk about SEL and counseling is that oftentimes when it reaches the point of mandated counseling, I don't want to say it's a Band-Aid, but it's reaction. And now it's how you're treating it. When if we had full SEL, like Laura and Caroline are speaking to, you're building in systems that are preventative. Then you're creating this whole holistic child that's hopefully you don't need.
No, I completely agree. I was just wondering if, because it said an additional school psychologist for testing, or if it's more counseling, or if it's both.
But both, but honestly, to take us to the next level, we need
Sure.
that, not preventative, or that preventative, that early stage, intervention, plan, of course.
What are your feelings about middle and high school? Do you feel like those students need additional support?
They right now have 2 guidance counselors that work closely with students. I mean, maybe
There's 2 guidance counselors at the school counselors at the high school, a full-time school psychologist. Danielle, our Aster social worker, also works with students at our high school. At the middle level, we have Kelly Mahoney, who is our school counselor. We also have Jennifer Overzak full-time. Both of them are full-time in the middle school. And Danielle Menace from Aster also works so primarily with secondary students, just based on the way that Aster's contract works. So there are a lot of supports. I think, in an ideal world, we could always have more supports for our students. I don't know that we can fit it all in here, but I think, one of the things that Mike said, and it's really true, front loading some of the supports and teaching students like coping skills and, time management skills and socialization skills, relationship building skills, all of those things are extremely important, because one of the things we know that when students leave elementary school and enter middle school, there's a dip in self-esteem that precedes any of the other risk behaviors. We can keep them really strong and build a system where they're very much supported coming up. Hopefully, we won't need as many of those supports in the secondary buildings.
Build a
Right.
strong foundation.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. I've just been about the prevention, I'm a huge proponent. But also, I'm also looking at the rates of the national rates, so I can't speak to local, of, clinical depression and suicide in our middle and high school children. And I'm worried.
So
Yeah.
just,
Heavily cohesive. K through 12.
So I just want to make sure.
Front loading the young, right,
Right.
elementary could help alleviate some of the pressure.
But I
on
also
middle school and high
think
school.
it speaks to the fact that we're doing like the district-wide training in like the Yale ruler from the Center for Emotional Learning. And I feel like it's those types of things, like that very responsive school culture that we're trying to build is going to be early identification, but also students feeling like they can connect with more. Sometimes they don't even need a counselor, you just need a place to kind of decompress, that solid object, so to speak. So I feel like as we're building, the support specifically with another counselor, I think we're also building a district-wide culture that is embracing our students and responding to their needs no matter where they are.
No,
Lori, can you hear us on here?
Yes.
Harry, go ahead and try.
you guys hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, so a couple of things. I mean, this is a one-shot funding thing. So if we go out and hire 2, 3, 4 new counselors, so before we go out and do that, somebody's got to come in and say, in year 2, here's how we're going to pay for that. So we're not laying off teachers because we don't have room in the budget to cover these people that we hired with, a one-time shot of extra money. The question I have is on the HVAC stuff. I mean, $1 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not a lot to do major projects. Can we use this and I think we've asked this before, can we supplement other projects? Like, the project that we're just talking about, part of having that lobby is to allow us to do social distancing. With the high school lobby, you're right up against the next person because the door just opens. Then maybe the same thing in Elm. Can we do even a beta project on, air conditioning, I don't know, using these split units for the library or something to say, we also know not just COVID causing us an air quality thing, but I think we'll talk about it later. We've had this ongoing mold thing. And is there a way to use this to say, what, if we did this across each, 4 classrooms at a time, we could take care of all of middle school, Elm and Alden, and get out of this nonsense. So if we looked at how we could do these, because I'm really worried about, I agree with the hiring. It would be great if we had counselors, if we had 3 counselors at every building. But the problem is they're going to give us the money to hire them and not the money to keep them on board. So we've got to look at these projects, and same with maintenance. If we're going to put something new in, we need to have the ongoing cost of these things and not just the one-time charge.
So Perry, just with the counselor, it's a 3-year funding source, but the hope is to build that position into the budget over time. So that allows us to get the counselor in a timely fashion using these funds with a long-term plan of bringing that counselor position as full-time or in the budget.
We've been hiring a lot of people, necessary, but a lot of people. And we've also, every year we're right at that tax cap. So we got to make sure, I know that's what we're saying. We need to have somebody come in and say, long-term financial plan says, yeah, you hire this person, we got $50K a year or 80K, whatever it is for this person for 3 years. But after that, we'll have this amount of money over here because this, if somebody's going to retire, we'll take it out of there. Whatever it is, we need to make sure it's sustainable and not just, a good idea for a year or worse yet, but then we're forced to actually let people go.
Can Elliot speak to the HVAC and AC questions or
Yeah, sure. I mean, thank you. So for those that may not know, I started my career as an HVAC technician and an indoor air quality engineer. So that's kind of my background before academia. My concern, Perry, to your point about using some of this money for incremental progress is that these buildings, especially the older buildings, are designed to breathe comprehensively. And so to attack the problem piecemeal would be fighting battle kind of against the tide of the original design intent of the way the building was constructed. I also would caution that cooling a building, cooling the air does not necessarily dehumidify the air. And so incorrect or improper designed cooling systems could actually exacerbate mold growth. And I really do believe that our focus should be on improving how the building breathes so that the occupants breathe better. And that would be not just cooling, but really a focus on dehumidification and filtration and upgrading the design of the building itself as a full building system. I kind of think, like you said, Barry, $1 million sounds like a lot of money, but in reality, when you're talking about system-wide upgrades, it's kind of like bringing a cup of sand to the beach. And not to mention that a project, even if we scoped it right now, we're talking about a May vote and possibly turning screws or actually building and designing in 2022 for a 2023 substantial completion. And it just feels, for me, from a technical perspective, and I'm going to wear both hats for a second, just as an academic administrator and a former engineer, it feels like we could do a lot more with that money to impact students right now and in the immediate future, while in parallel designing a full system redesign to fix our buildings the right way, to get them breathing the right way, in a way it's environmentally friendly, it's utility responsible, and it's a focus on indoor air quality to really support children and health and by extension, their performance.
I agree with you completely. I just don't want to see us, the other pieces, I don't just want to see us do this for an old project. Or, I mean, the temperature is going up. Every year, it's higher humidity, higher temperatures, and yet we've got these kids in school till almost July 1st. I mean, this last year was brutal on these kids, especially wearing masks. And if we're gonna be forced to, unless we're gonna pull back on how long kids go to school, which I know we're not gonna do, we need to make sure, and I agree, we need a full plan across the 3 buildings. And that's why I'm saying I'd rather find ways to use this money to fix a problem. Not necessarily HVAC, but fix a problem and not get ourselves tangled up in, trying to fix issues that are really long-term. It's going to cost us an extra $100,000 a year to do this. Great. But in 3 years, we don't have that money anymore. So start a facilities project for us, Elliot.
If that's a directive, sir, I would be lovely. I'd be glad to.
And don't forget the windows. But wait on those for a couple of years till the prices come down.
Yeah, sore spot with those windows, Perry.
Oh, tell me about it. I got to put 48 windows in, and I just was told that the windows went up 12% in the last 3 days. Anyway, so do we have a reasonable, sort of this is what we're proposing to do, need conceptual approval from the board, or this is just a step in time?
This is really just to share the board, share with the this money in meeting the deadline, the August 15th deadline. If there was anything that was concerning, that you wanted to add to our recommendations, or anything that you wanted to pull from our recommendations, it sounds like maybe the air and ventilation, HVAC, maybe a bigger project, and that actually leads into conversation of like what is the direction the board wants to make, a building condition an energy audit, and maybe that's just the beginning of a larger capital project.
To me, if there was some specific project, like putting in some kind of electronic air filter that would help the kids that have asthma, or, you know, kill germs or whatever, that's one thing, but trying to do an HVAC project, as Elliot said, with $1 million, you know, you're not going to get anywhere.
Elliot, were you saying that, to Perry's point, that with those funds, impact student life, physical plant stuff is the longer shot, and doing something more like staff wise is can have a more immediate impact?
Just logistically, and then Mike can certainly speak to this too, like anything we think about right now is 2 years out, probably 3 to 4 years from completion. And so, you know, it just doesn't. Physical plans, yeah. So while I think it's absolutely necessary, and I'd love to start like last month, I think that we have to be very intentional and almost surgical with the approach, and think about what our kids need in September. Like Caroline spoke about earlier, we don't know what the condition of our students or even our staff is going to be when they get here. You know, that money, and it would be much more impactful. Just being people-centered, being student first, right out the gate in September, and at the same time, the right way. I don't want to go to the taxpayers 3 times and say, we're going to do a little bit of air conditioning, and then we're going to do a little bit of air conditioning, and 3 years later, we're going to do a little bit of air conditioning, and everyone's going to get exhausted hearing. Let's get it right. Let's plan it properly as a full system, a district, and take care of people while we're at it.
Understood. That makes, okay, I get what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense.
Do we know, did they give you any idea? We requested the extension on that one. Did they give you any idea, like, oh, we'll get back to you in a week, or?
Actually, I heard today.
Oh.
So we have an extension.
Oh, good.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
So Laura, what do you need by the middle of August to get to them, the deadline?
We go onto the portal and we enter our proposed spending. And like I said, it's kind of projected funding. And then we're able
So
to.
I was gonna say, so you would say like mental health, you're gonna put 75,000 towards, and, you know, so you have to categorize it that general? Is that what they're looking for?
It's maybe not that general. There are some other pieces that may fall under or under academics. Like if it was academics, maybe it's after school programming, or it's extended day, or it's materials and resources, it's extra staffing. So
Okay.
Some kind of dive on it. And then some projected costs. And then what Jennifer said was asked, we'll be able to sort of tweak and revise along the way. Right now, we just meet that deadline, meet those deadlines.
So when do you have that kind of detail for the board review?
Can you say that again, Perry?
I said, when will you have that kind of detail for the board to review?
I mean, after the submission of our initial application and drill down.
Well, I think you're saying you're going to have to put, we need 150,000 for new staffing. We need $20,000 for this. When would the board see like that you're putting in the portal?
Well, it'll be put in the portal the 15th of August, and I think there's a board meeting, right? The 17th.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments around this? Okay, why don't we move on to the next steps for facilities? Because I think that really leads us sort of out of that last discussion and into, we really need to, look at an energy audit, find out what we can get for, how this thing plays out, what's the best way to fund a project that really changes the environment for our students and our staff. So why don't we move on to number 5?
Perry, how quickly can we get energy audits and building condition surveys? And I mean, I know we've talked about it for many months, but how quickly can we get that if we say, yes, we want to do it today?
I don't know. We had a company come in that was willing to do an energy audit, like within a few weeks. Look at all of not just LEDs, but look at solar and geothermal and look at windows. The building condition survey, we talked about that probably a year ago, where we're not in the cycle for SED, but we could get one done ourselves. And I don't know where we are with those things. That's sort of because what we need to do is end up wrapping this into a major project that has sections like, what's going to be done with capital, what can be done with sort of creative financing around energy. And we need somebody to lead this.
I mean, well, if I could just chime in, the building condition survey is mandated by the state and it's regulated and it's reimbursable, but it doesn't mean you can't have that same at a firm. So the district really has two choices right now, or three choices. You can work off of the previous version and just update it as is. You can use the architects of record that we have right now in play and ask them to perform those services, or you can RFP for just that service, unknowing that we wouldn't get the aid because it's not our turn in the state. The energy audits, I would just remind the district that energy audits are going to tell you what's feasible and relatively cost neutral based on the prescribed metrics that the energy auditing firm is recommending. Other districts choose to pick their scope and then see what can fit an energy program. So it's two different ways of looking at it, and I would just caution the board to consider both before committing to one way or the other. So for example, an energy auditor is going to say that for X dollars, we can replace the lights and upgrade the well pumps or whatever. But that may not necessarily reflect the district's priorities of work. If you do it the other way, if you work back, or if you work from the position of, let's do a condition service, our physical plant's status, and then add to that our program needs, because remember, a building condition survey is never going to tell you that your classrooms need to be upgraded or plumbing needs to be switched out, your HVAC is not up to par. The building condition survey is always going to be independent of academic need, and a true master facilities
signs both. So
again, just my recommendation to the board as you're working through this problem is to really think about what our needs are as a district, and then perhaps employ things like an energy audit to complement the scope of work that we want to see done for our kids, and not just do what we can because it's seemingly cost neutral based on a recommended or prescribed set of metrics.
Well, and Elliot, just so Brian went out to talk to, I guess it's SED, and we were, I want to say 2 or 3 years out from getting a building condition survey. And we had given them approval to go get an incremental condition survey done so that we could look at what are the major issues. And I'm not sure where that stands. We had a company come in and was going to do an energy audit of our entire set of campuses. And then I think that got pulled back to go use somebody that we used before to do it, but we have all these pieces out there, and I think part of what we wanted to hear tonight was, where are we? I mean, do we have we approached them on doing a building condition survey? Have we looked at because if we find out that we've got 2 buildings that are about to collapse, and we need to do, not that we do, so that just in case anybody misunderstood what I said, but if we had major construction that needed to be done, that might turn out to be $20 million. And then we're in a, well, do we do it, or do we, close a building, or do we move stuff, or do we shift, one group to another building? Same thing with the energy audit. I mean, if we can get a lot of this stuff done and tie it into our students' education. But we need to get this thing moving as a project, and start, making some progress on this, because we've had this conversation, hey, it's going to take 2 years to get this going. That was 2 years ago. Now, granted, COVID, all that stuff. But I don't want to be sitting here 2 years from now saying, oh, we could get this done in probably 2 years. So we need to find a way, and really we need the administration to find a way, whether it's a single person's going to own this, and if we need specific information on the size of the project, again, we've got this long-term financial plan that should be able to tell us how much we can afford, because you don't just spend all the money, you take basically a mortgage on it. But all of that, we need all that information to come together to make a decision on moving forward and what we can get rid of and what we can, let's push this out 10 years because it doesn't matter.
Barry, we almost have to prioritize as far as what we want between windows, air, solar. I mean, those are all major projects. So I think you have to get them all on paper. I know we still need to do the building, review and all of that, but I'm just saying above and beyond that, there's things we want to do as well.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Chris. I think it comes down to, especially looking at recent history. I mean, we've had to close a building. We had to, luckily it was covered by insurance in one building. We had to close, sort of close another building, move kids from one building to another, and we didn't really fix anything. We cleaned it all up. We put it to bed in that whole condition, but we didn't fix anything. And we need to start pulling together, and I don't know who the right people are that have that facilities background, that building background, as well as the educational background to say, well, look, if you're going to tear this stuff apart, put this kind of technology in the ceiling. Or, let's make the classrooms, since we've got, our enrollments now, let's break one of the classrooms or two of the classrooms, so let's make them one big classroom. We need to get all of that together and then, assess what that would take to do. So Laura, how do we move forward on this?
I think we should get the facilities committee together and start setting a plan.
Okay. So again, I don't want to be sitting here 2 years from now talking about, geez, we really need to do something. We've got mold again, or we've got we can't handle the kids in this building because in late June you can't even breathe in there. So I guess let's get the facilities committee together. We need somebody though to lay out a plan for it, not just a committee to talk about, oh yeah, don't forget this, don't forget that. But we need somebody to pull that into a plan. We're gonna identify all these things. We're gonna get this building condition survey done by the end of June. By the end of September, we're gonna get an energy audit done so we know what we could save and what we could do. We're gonna have the input from, I know we're gonna see the financial plan in a week or two. But here's where things roll off. So we need somebody to pull that together into a plan so that people can start taking responsibility for specific pieces.
What I would ask, just as a facility committee member, is, any ideas or thoughts that you might have, Perry, or anyone, Howard, just email the facilities committee so we make sure that's considered when we're going over that, so we have all the input in there.
Okay, I think that's a good idea, Chris. I mean, and I really, to me, just because of where I am now in school, I I want to see this stuff. If we're, reducing our energy consumption, if we're reducing our carbon footprint, I want our kids to know about this stuff. I want them to see that stuff in action, see how, we can make a difference, and we are making a difference. So when they leave the district, they think about these things versus, just burning more fuel oil. All right. So when does the facilities committee meet next?
Well, we are meeting on August 10th, but that agenda is full. So maybe the next meeting will focus on a plan, a facilities plan. We have.
We can probably start a conversation though, Laura, just to set the seed for the next meeting,
And set our meeting schedules too.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this piece? So, can we set a date of, I don't know, you're meeting August 10th. I don't know if you meet, what do you meet, monthly, Chris?
I think as needed, really. It was consecutive weeks for a few weeks. So, we could set something up shortly thereafter. If we have a board meeting, what did you say, on the 17th of August? Once,
I think,
we could try to make another quick meeting before then, just to kind of get a layout or something, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the committee. But.
Well, no, and I would, between now and then, I would get somebody, and they're probably already there, but I would just get somebody that's gonna own this thing, right? Somebody that gets nervous if they haven't, gotten any updates. If somebody somebody that's really sort of held responsible and accountable for getting all of this crap, because it's not just facilities, it's not just that. There's a whole bunch of things that have to come together. Then there's a whole bunch of options for getting money to pay for it and to recover expenses and all those things. We need somebody that's going to bring that together. So between now and, the next time we have a discussion at a board meeting, I'd really like to see if we couldn't get somebody assigned to this.
You're talking more on the staff side or on the board side, Perry, or both?
This has got to be basically a project manager for Millbrook. So
Okay.
it's not somebody, it's not like parents or or even board members. It's someone in the staff, I think.
Or both. Okay.
All right. Anything else? All right. President and Vice President's report. I really don't have anything. The Dutchess County School Board's off for the summer. I did have a nice meeting talking about BOCES, but I think that's a ways out on changing the, whatever you want to call it, the face of BOCES. But really nothing beyond that. I did want to ask about the NISBA convention or whatever it's called in October. Is that face-to-face, Cheryl? Do you know?
City this year.
Yep, it's in New York City.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we need everybody to think about whether or not they're okay to do it and if they want to do it. Howard, do you have anything?
I do, but convention is normally the weekend before Halloween, so
Oh, so maybe like the last.
yeah, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, something like that.
And then
And yeah, I do have, in the last on board NISBA newspaper, there was an article on summer congressional meetings being planned. Well, since I'm the legislative liaison from this board, I joined the NISBA, was seeking more advocacy liaison. So I joined the NISBA advocacy so I can be congressional meetings that they're going to be planning, there's no reason Millbrook should not be part of being more involved with legislation, not only on a state level, but on the federal level. So I figured it just made sense, hand in hand, the position should do both. So I've contacted NISBA, filled out the forms, and they've contacted me, and I'm in. So so I'm in, and so I will represent the district in both positions. I'll be the advocate, legislative liaisons for the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Harry,
It wasn't a
we're,
grueling process.
Harry, we're just having a hard time hearing you and sometimes Chris, so Elliot just wants to switch out his computers real quick. If we could just take a minute to do that. It's a struggle sometimes to hear you. Please hold. Okay, can you talk now, Harry?
No, you can't hear us.
Can you hear me now?
Hear you much better. Can you talk a little more? It doesn't last long.
Really? That is the first time I've ever heard anyone say that.
All right, the last thing I want to say is that you will get the dates. I'll send out an email to the board members. And by the next meeting, if we would let Cheryl know and the rest of the board members know who will be available to attend. There is lodging available, and Cheryl needs that by a certain date. You could also go down for a day or two, since it is in New York City. You can always drive down and take Metro North. So that's always an option. So, and it is beneficial to attend. Thank you.
All right, next we've got Laura, your superintendent reports.
Hi, everybody. So a couple of shout outs, just sent shout out to the facilities team. The central office construction, which will be in the old, where the library was, that construction has started about 5 weeks, and now we're down to 4 weeks, 4 days. I have a countdown for the workers in there saying, we're ready for you to be done then. And this space is going to house our deputy superintendent, our director of technology, advisor of data and analytics and professional development, 2 senior typists, and our CSE chair. So that's very exciting to have everybody in one space, central office. Garage and renovations will begin this Thursday. New siding will be put on the building, and bollards will be put to protect the building from snow and plows and all of that. And we're also talking a little bit about landscaping too, beautifying that area for the community. Faded signs, you might see a stop sign that's faded or some other signs. So new signs have been ordered, and we'll replace those in a few weeks. And then just a shout out to Millbrook Rotary, financial support from the Tribute Garden and Millbrook Educational Foundation provided school supplies to families who are in need. So and supplies are ordered and bundled by staff at Reardon Briggs Hardware. So it truly is a family affair, helping our families in district. And so thank you all for
being a part of that good work, or working for us and supporting our families. The website, I don't know if you've gone on our website, but a new template has been launched. And Carrie has been working behind the scenes on cleaning up the content, putting really vibrant photos on the website, really creating a story about who we are as Millbrook and celebrating things that we do and the accomplishments of our students. So that's ongoing work, and she'll continue doing that. And then I have guidance as a point, and really I have to say there is no guidance. We're waiting for the governor and New York State Department of Health to give us clear guidance. I shared with the board in my weekly about Commissioner Rosa. She's asked for a few recommendations to happen. That includes masking all staff and students indoors in lieu of screening and testing, masking on school supplied transportation with no physical social distancing indoors when possible. So those are just recommendations from Rosa. I have a meeting tomorrow with the local Department of Health and maybe the county executive, he might be there, and DC superintendents, just to get a clear idea of what is our direction, what we should be planning for. Again, we're planning for full in-person, and we'll see what happens.
There's no direction, well, there doesn't seem to be much direction from Albany, Paul, but if there's no direction, then then it's left to the school board to make those decisions, and then we'll have to, with administration input, obviously, work out a plan. And we should probably, if we do not hear from by the next meeting, we should start coming up with something so we're not caught flat-footed on this.
I agree, and Commissioner Rosa was really supporting the local discretion, please, appropriate and local discretion as well. So you're absolutely right.
That's probably the way it should be anyway, but
No, that's okay. That was it. That's what I have to.
And that's.
But just to be clear for the parents though, the options in the fall right now, unless something dramatically changes, you're either in school or you have to find some other alternative like homeschooling or e-schooling, but there is no remote access to classrooms planned for Millbrook for the fall, right?
Having conversations with BOCES and fellow Dutchess County superintendents that if there are medically fragile, asking families for documentation, and we can work through BOCES through their COSERs and availability of remote learning.
But I just want to make sure parents are aware. There's going to be no support for home access or whatever we called it, remote access, remote learning to tie into like a Millbrook classroom. Hopefully we can find an option through BOCES. Parents could do homeschooling, but those things, if there is no option for BOCES, then basically it's homeschooling or one of these, there's a bunch of them. I don't know if they work, but the bunch of these K-12 websites, I don't know if those are accessible, but that's really a parental decision for Millbrook as a district. We are going back live only, right?
Yes.
And hopefully with that being said, hopefully we won't have to, but hopefully we'll be ready to if needed. That's hopefully not going to happen, but I don't want to be caught off guard and not have the ability. That's all.
Probably the bigger question is this whole thing with masks is, I read these guidances and I still don't know what the hell they're telling us. Do it, but don't do it if it doesn't make sense almost, well, that's helpful. Anyway, all right. Was that it, Laura?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Hold on here. I'm gonna find where am I? Sorry about that. All right, football merger.
Yes, so last we spoke, when Al was here and Rick Sipe and Caroline spoke about a merger. We've spoken about a merger with Dover. We've spoken about a merger with Pine Plains and Rhinebeck. And that seemed to be fine because Dover, our students would lose instructional time. And there were cost of transportation. The cost of transportation also Rhinebeck merger as well. But with Al in conversation with Dover, they were able to accommodate the time and push out their time for practice games, allowing our students to be part of that merger. So in conversation with Caroline, Rick, and Al, that merger with Dover has some significant pros to it. It's a school that's closer, willing to accommodate our time needed to get there for tryouts, practices, and games. Our students will have opportunities to play more because they're not on a team that has more athletes. And and according to the section, from what I understand, is that they prefer to have another merger because now it creates another team. Did I cover all of the pros?
And our students, Perry and Chris, you're on screen. I don't know if you were able to see them, but we did have 5 high school students who were here. They've been communicating with Coach Hamill about their interest in participating in a Dover merger. I do want to give them a shout out because they did say they probably had to leave, can't drive after 9. But they did say as long as they could to be able to just be here for the football merger conversation.
With 3 linemen and a tight end, if you're wondering.
So we have, so the last time we talked, we had 1 student that was really interested. Now we have 5.
We have 5, and that's not even a certain number because from what we understand, there are quite a few. So I don't know if that's 5 or 8, but there were 5 here tonight.
Yeah, they've been generating interest. And I believe Al and I both got an email from a student advocating for himself and the Dover merger.
Yeah, he was here.
Oh, he was here.
Cost of transportation.
It's about $3,500. It's a one-way. Last time we spoke about it was, we calculated it as 2 ways, but in the memo to parents, it would be to the destination, to the location.
We can get people to sign up, like date certain type of thing, then I don't see why we can't, but that's my opinion, but we need commitments.
Is there a minimum that we have to make this happen?
No, it could have been 1 student, could have been 2. They still have to try out.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna put this kind of effort into all the other sports too, right? Like a school to merge for lacrosse, tennis, all the other sports that are out there. The thing that bothers me is, this is like the 3rd time in a board meeting, at least the 3rd time. We've talked about another option, another way to make football happen. But I never hear us talk about the other sports, like we're putting in that kind of effort. I mean, I remember when we had to shut down lacrosse. I've never heard us try to merge with another district on lacrosse. We don't have tennis courts. I know we did years ago, we merged a tennis team. No, actually, I think we went to play someplace else. But, personally, I want to see this kind of effort put, if we're going to do this and we're going to force, if we only have 1 kid, we're still going to have a football team. We need to do this for all sports, or we need to do it for none.
Do we know if there's issues with any other sports right now?
Well, we don't.
Everything but lacrosse. I mean, everything but soccer. Soccer seems to have more kids than they know what to do with.
So for lacrosse, if we don't have a team, do we know that there's people that want to play it? So we have to, is that right? Okay. All right. So we have to figure out something like lacrosse.
And the other pieces, we have to have a team willing to merge with us.
Yeah.
So it's,
We have to find.
we can do what we can, but within our geographic area that makes sense, you know, I don't know if we'll be able to find an emerging partner, we can certainly try.
Yeah, like, I just want to make sure that we're treating all the sports equally. If we're gonna put like, you know, I mean, the amount of time, and I love football, but the amount of time we put into discussing football, and we're gonna merge 3 schools, now we're gonna merge 1 school, we got 1 kid, we're gonna have to no, we don't have to transfer. The amount of time that, you know, Al has spent on this, the board spent, I'm just hoping, because I've never heard a word about another sport at this level of, hey, let's, you know, we got 3 kids that want to play lacrosse. Let's go find a school for them to play. Let's go find a way to make this happen. I just want to make sure we're treating all of the sports equally.
Yes, equality for all sports. Equity but equality.
All right. Okay. So where are we? I mean, is it a go? Is it a, what's next?
The conceptual approval from the board for Al to be official interest, and also to work with Dover to apply to the section to get the final approval for the merger.
So is it, and it's $3,500 is what it's going to cost the district,
Approximately.
but we don't have to have a stipend for a football coach or anything like that.
I think that's up to us. We could potentially send, and we have in the past, made that suggestion to send a coach with a student, but we don't have to. I don't believe, Al hasn't mentioned that. Dover's not, as far as I know, requesting that, but we can certainly find out. And really, it would be at our discretion if we wanted to send a coach.
Okay, so just $3,500. All right, so let's just take a straw poll. David?
I'm okay.
Chris?
Which one?
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Not Chris Rosenblatt. Rosenbergen, Jesus, I'm losing it.
I'm okay with it. I thought you said not Chris Rosenberg, but no, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Chris too.
Yes.
Okay, Jen?
You can call me Mary, and yes, I'm good with it.
All right, Howard?
Go.
Okay. All right. Paul's not here. I get everybody? Yeah, I get everybody. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
All right. So new business. We got a letter of resignation from, is it Sheila Smalley? Yes, Sheila Smalley. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Congratulations. For if he's retiring.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, very good. All right, do we have a motion on the letter of resignation from Jean Tobin?
So moves.
There is a second? Any discussion?
I want to thank Gene for her service that he's been doing for many years. So, and Sharon and Sheila too has been in District 17. So, we both should be thanked for their service.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any against? Okay. All right. Questions from the public? Do we have anything, Cheryl?
Anything online, but we do have 3 people in attendance. So do we have any questions? I just need your name and address.
I am the pastor at St. Peter's Church in Lithgow. I live in Millbrook Hollow, 22 Lower Lane. And I know the hour's late, and I thank you for your time. And I'm keep my remarks brief. First of all, thank you to Superintendent Laura, who's met with me and my wife about these questions surrounding equity and curriculum. I think first maybe back in March, and then the school district was very cooperative when I filed some additional requests for information, and that information was forthcoming. And then, of course, to all of the board members for volunteering. I think from what I heard this evening, particularly from Mr. Hartswick and Mr. Shapiro, I can't really say anything more. They spoke very much for me. I think that they spoke for those who came with me, members of my parish, and one who's also a neighbor. So I'm glad to hear that Millbrook understands it's a different community than some of the other communities where these words are being thrown around and that a blanket approach, a scattershot really wouldn't work here or apply. When I read the proposal from education elements, I was taken by some of the language, and I thought this surely can't describe the community that I'm a pastor to and the people that I've come to know. So I would agree. I would second Mr. Shapiro and second Mr. Hartswick, and say that to the extent that this is not a group you want to work with or that can work with us, I encourage you to terminate that contract if it's not salvageable. I hear you saying that you want to meet students where they are. That's exactly what I think you need to do. I hear you saying you don't want to change the curriculum. I second that, but I do want to ask one question, and that is, what is the status of this, what looks to be a microsite called CI and PPS? Curriculum and Instruction Pupil Personnel Services. It's on a Google Drive, sites.google.com, Millbrook, csd.org, SIPS Home Equity. Looks like it was put up about a year ago, and it does seem to have quite a bit of the kind of language that some of you are finding disturbing. It talks about teaching our children to become activists. There's a letter that was put out by the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project called Guidance for Talking with Kids About Protests that are, I would say, hasn't aged well, especially in light of the events of January 6th. Does these documents, does this website have an official status with the board? Because I can see why maybe some people thought education elements would be a good fit, because the rhetoric is very similar. But if you are stepping back from that kind of rhetoric, if you're stepping back from that kind of language, what kind of status does this site have, and will you be reviewing it in light of tonight's discussion? So that would be my question to you.
What was the site again?
The Curriculum and Instruction Pupil Personnel Services, CI and PPS. And the website address is sites.google.com/Millbrook, csd.org/SIPS/home/equity. So it's not on your main site. It seems to be a one-off site that was set up about a year ago. And language, it says at the Board of Education meeting on May 19th, 2020, the Board of Education of Millbrook Central School District accepted a superintendent's recommended budget, which included money aimed toward professional development in the area of equity. It goes on to talk a lot about, there's some language that I would have concern about, particularly making our students activists. Students can be activists if they want to be.
Right.
I'd be concerned if that were an official part of the curriculum. So if you can't answer that tonight, maybe you can get that too. Get me an answer.
We'll definitely look into it. Yes, it's not, if it isn't, it better not be an official site. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Email that site just so that we don't have anybody, struggling to find it. It'd be easier just to click, find the link.
Thank you.
Did you guys hear that?
Hi, I'm John DiMaggio. I live in Millbrook Hollow. He's in school or anything like that. I'm just here sort of advocating or whatever. But one of the things that struck me, kind of a little bit what Perry had alluded to, is, you're talking about this facilities project, right? And you don't have the money to do all this stuff, right? But then you got $1 million in COVID money. Can't you take some of that COVID money, do a work study for the students, teach them 5, 6 trades at least, do this, get students involved, and spend some of that money in a work study program to make up the difference for what you need? As well as you're talking about an engineering study as well. So maybe do that as well as a work study for the students, right? Something that kids can learn and that they can use as they go along. Anyway, it seems like a no-brainer to me, all right? Money, I don't know what the requirements are on the COVID, but it sure sounds like something that you could sort of wiggle in there and make up the difference that you may need, as well as you might even have extra money that you could help students learn some other stuff as well in that. All right, that's one issue. The other one was when you're talking about the education elements, is that correct? All right, some of the questions that I threw up in my mind, first of all, when you said you sent out a survey, you got a 10% result back, I thought that was great, because most surveys, you're lucky if you get 7%, all right, and that I've ever been involved in. And normally, if you get less than 4%, your survey is pretty much useless, okay? So I thought that was pretty good, you got at least 10% back, all right? But overall, some of the questions I had on this is, what kind of a contract is this? Is this sole source or was it competitive? Did you use a systems approach? Did you develop requirements, put out an RFP, make evaluate with evaluation criteria? And did you, have an evaluation board and request white papers? And then after that, request a full-on proposal and then make contract decisions based on that? Or was this just sole source? We used this company and we gave it to them. I mean, you're talking about what, $54,000 or something like that? I'm familiar with the federal government. Anything over $10,000 has to be competitive, right? You can't do a sole source on. So that was one of the questions that popped into my mind right off on that one. So and you can make sure that some of the questions and concerns that you had are included in the RFP when you put that out, and included in your evaluation criteria when you start evaluating, right? So that you don't get blindsided by something that comes in out of nowhere that you're not really sure what's in there, all right? And then you can make your decisions based on that, okay? Something else that I was to ask off top is when you went to COVID and when it started, what percentage of your students did you have problems with logging, who didn't log in? And what kind of grades did you have? I'm familiar, like, for example, Fairfax County, Virginia, they had a 39% increase in failures in the classes, failing one class. And it was like 40% increase in kids who failed 2 classes. It was ridiculous. And in Seattle, they lost track of over more than 50% of their students. They didn't know where they were in last September. So I was wondering if your numbers, what your numbers look like with the remote logins and that kind of stuff. That's my questions. That's what I have. I hope to say some stuff. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lois Zarembo, and I am an active member of St. Peter's Church in Millbrook. But although I live in Stanfordville, I'd just like to say that I noticed when you were talking about the equity proposal, and when the lady, whose name I can't remember, Carolyn was talking about the strategic plans for kids, and Chris was talking about the mental health issues that's facing children. I would like to make a recommendation that you step back and think about the children as stakeholders and not simply students. Nowhere was that brought up. And Howard mentioned the word collaborative, triggering him for some other meanings. Our kids are under siege. And you may want to step back and take a preemptive strike, because you've already said that you have no idea what you're expecting when the kids are coming back this fall. Think about them as stakeholders, and you ask them to articulate how they measure success and not tell them how you measure success. You may start to make progress and avoid some really big mental health problems and suicides, because it is rampant in our country, and it doesn't take that much to get them engaged. Treat them as stakeholders. They are, and so are their parents. And Howard is right. It's right in front of you. Just please do the due diligence. It's not that hard. They really need your help. And you're not going to want to go to kid funerals because it's really awful.
Lois, can you just spell your last name for me?
Sure, ZAREMBO. Thank you.
That's it.
So Laura, I'd suggest, out on I guess now with the new board docs, we should be able to, when we get to that question and answer part, if we could put those questions or sort of questions, comments out there, and then the answer right in the agenda, I guess that would be the right place to put it now with the new board docs. Almost like the minutes. But I want to make sure that we follow up on those things, but also that, people know where to get them. So, yeah. All right.
Thank you again for.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
All right. Request for future agenda items. We did add building condition survey and energy audit for the 17th. Where are we on those things? Have we moved forward? I think that's a good place if we can figure out who's the right person to own it and drive it. Maybe we can get that all on together. The 17th is going to be, a fairly lengthy meeting. So, all right. September 7th. Oh, okay. Actually, I guess we moved the first financial plan to the 7th. Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other agenda items that you want to see put on this list? All right. No explanations needed. All right. We need to go into executive session to discuss pertaining to particular persons. Before I say that, we may, when we come back to public session, we may take action related to matters that are discussed during executive session. So, if you can, stay tuned. Do I have a motion to go to executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Good.
Any against? Okay. All right. Let's go to executive session. I don't remember how we do this now, Cheryl.
You just stay here and we leave. You just
Okay.
said.
5-minute break.
Thank God there's no vending machines here.
I know. I wish there was.
Oh, Laura, where's all those snacks?
I have tons of snacks.
I don't want any, I'm just kidding.
I'll bring one next.
No, don't bring any. My husband and I
Yeah.
have a competition right now, but who can use them.
Hey Cheryl, you're still recording, I think.
Yeah, I haven't got off,
Yeah, you got
I'm
it.
doing your vote. Hold on one second.